I live on a station. I run a station with my son. My son and his wife live on the station with 3 little boys. So a lot of times it's taken up working. I make time, and my work is, I like to use all the bush materials for my work. I was born in Mount Isa, but my traditional country is Injalaji, which is around in the Camberwell region. It's 13 k's. Camberwell is situated 13 k's east of the Northern Territory border. My father is an Aluwara man from Lake Nash, and we've had a wonderful connection to my father's people at Lake Nash, which is across the Northern Territory border. And we have many relatives and connections all over that side. And yeah, so I'm a bush person, and I'm very proud of that. And I always find it quite difficult when I come to the city, because there's just far too, I don't say too many people, but there's a lot more people than what I'm used to seeing from where I come from. And sometimes you look at someone and you say, you know, you smile or whatever, and you know, they don't know what you're doing. And we don't do that at home, you know. You can say g'day to anybody. So, but still, it's very nice, and everyone's been very nice, and it's just been wonderful to meet so many people here over the few days since the exhibition's opened. I used to paint. I started off painting. Jill, my friend, this comes from Townsville for the weekend. We started off many years ago, and as things develop over the years, of course, you know, nothing stays the same. So Jill has gone on to other things with her work in Townsville, and in an academic way, whereas I choose to stay home and work on my own. I work in isolation, basically. I have never had any art training of any sort. We used to go to a couple of there was a lady that painted and went to a few classes, but I always looked for something to use from the land itself. I needed to use a natural fibre. There was no one in my family that was working in any of those materials. And so I did search for quite a number of years, and I actually discovered that the Spinifex is very resilient. It lives and survives in a very, very quite harsh environment. And you can't kill it. You can't do, you know, like we've had bushfires at home at the moment, and nearly all the Spinifex is burnt. Our property's 95% burnt out. And all I can see is burnt hills and the majority of the Spinifex is gone, but it will grow back, and that's just what it does. And that is actually what these little rings are. The little rings are made from the Spinifex plant, and it's the little individual runners that it comes from. So it's quite strong, and I guess I see it as part of what and how we manage and survive in the environment, and that we can use materials from our environment. I guess as Lorraine, just listen to Lorraine's talk, and she's using discarded materials as well. So I discovered the Spinifex, and I thought, well, this is what I'm going to use, and spent a couple of years experimenting with it to make sure that it was going to last, and it has done, and I have. I met Diane along the way, and we've had a really good association, and I've been part of a number of exhibitions and that, and so my work changed from two-dimensional to three-dimensional, and initially, when I started off working in the Spinifex, I didn't want to do what, I guess back, there was works that were done, there were some things made out of Spinifex that we used probably traditionally, but I hadn't seen any, and what I chose to construct was something of my own shape, size, whatever. I did not want to do anything that was or had been made basically before. I wanted to work entirely in a contemporary style. So, and I called my first set of vessels Gutu because that means a container vessel type in my traditional language. In the contemporary style, none of my works were meant to be functional. All of my pieces are non-functional, and they're basically representative, I guess, of that very harsh, dark, dry region that I live and work in. So yes, Diane. I probably raved on a bit there, but
no.
But I know.
After all these years, it was only just the other day on one of our long telephone conversations, I said to Shirley, how did you actually discover the colour in the Spinifex? And I was very surprised at her answer. And she also might talk a little bit more about the colour and how that changes according to seasons and the plant itself.
Well, Spinifex in our country is always been considered as quite a rubbish material because grass grows in the grazing industry anyway, because the grass will grow in between the Spinifex, but and cattle will eat the Spinifex, when the soft Spinifex, when there's nothing else for them to eat, and they can actually survive on that. And that's basically what's been happening at home at the moment before it was all burnt. But yeah, so we muster and do our cattle work in the cooler months of the year and stuff like that, and yeah, and in my searching, we were actually mustering, and I was racing around chasing cattle on a horse, and spotted this Spinifex that had been turned over by the grader and whatever else, and here were all these beautiful colours. And I said to Diane, I saw it off a horse, you know, because I'd always been searching for this material, and I'd sort of thought, well, maybe I can use the Spinifex. And then I saw this colour, and I thought, you know, my goodness, that this beautiful colour that's underneath. There's actually 3 layers of a cover that's on each strand, and I pick each strand individually and clean the strand, and there's this beautiful colour underneath it. So quite often I've had people ask me, do I colour the strands or whatever else? And I don't have any really dark ones in here, but there are probably a few, but the colours vary, as Diane's mentioned, are the variations in the colour. It's the seasons that mainly determine the colour that I've found. Wintertime colours are a beautiful golden yellow. And I've done works with the golden yellow. The pieces I had in Cairns was a yellow piece and a red piece, basically. So one was a summertime piece, one was a wintertime piece, because the colours vary and the colours are softer. And as they age, they darken in colour, and I think the heat probably has a process to do with that as well. But that was something that I didn't even know until I went and started using the grass to do that with. So yeah. Some do. Some will go the yellowy into the orangey colour, but then as they stay longer, they do go into the darker red. Yeah.
We've been collecting Shirley's work over the last few years, and they've mostly been the guto, and that idea of vessels has continued all the way through hasn't it, Shirley, from that
yes.
first original piece?
Yeah.
There have been the fascinators that you've made. I think people would find that interesting.
I know.
Where that might have come from.
They're different.
Yes, they are.
They came about, I was asked to do something for a women's show in Townsville, and the ladies in Townsville were raising money for domestic violence victims and things like that. It was a charity organisation, and they wanted a piece of work that was a women's thing, and I thought, well, you know, I could do heaps of traditional women's things, but I thought I'd do something quite contemporary. So, and fascinators are all a go. So everyone's buying fascinators. So I made fascinators out of Spinifex and an emu feathers, an emu bone, and some seeds. And the gallery bought them.
We did. How could we not? I'd never have asked for it, but
it's adaptable. It's an adaptable material, you know.
But this work now, Wingreeguu, it's quite a departure from what you've been doing, and it's probably something that you've thought about for quite a long time. And I think because there's an emphasis on structures and architecture within the APT 7 concept, this idea came up in discussion with Shirley. Shirley came to the gallery last December, just before Christmas.
Yeah.
Must have been round about this time, and saw the space, that talked to the exhibition designers, and I think the idea evolved as a reality out of that. And it always was based on the idea of the turpentine tree. And could you just say something about that and the, again, rubbish trees from your property that you've used?
Well, it's the turpentine bush is another one of those things that grow that. Well, one of the really hard things, as I said to Margie before, my sister, they live on a station up in the Territory and that, and my husband manages the place, and the hardest thing is these grow very, very thickly, and they would be the hardest things to chase cattle through. You're on a horse galloping through the turpentine, they can either hide under it or, and nothing eats it. It actually has an oil, and nothing much grows underneath it. So the timber's actually quite strong in some parts, and there is another type that a witchetty grub can grow underneath that, so it can also be a food source as well in some of them. I don't think where we live is far too hard for it to nurture a food source, but it grows in the root system. So underneath that, you'll get a witchetty grub that you can actually eat. So, but that doesn't happen where I live at the moment. Probably around Camberwell in places, my home country, it does. Well, it does, because I've seen it. It does happen out there. But the turpentine bush is considered something that's not got a lot of use, and I've quite often seen them tipped over, as was this with the. I had to go and literally pull the last of it out and just chop the last little piece off of the root that was attached to the thing. And I've seen them for years. I've seen them, or for a couple of years or more. I've seen them, and really enjoyed and thought that I could do something with the structural shape of that, because it did remind me of the traditional shelters that were made by Aboriginal people, and yes, and of course I had seen some that had been constructed probably many years ago, and the coverings had blown off them, so the basics of the shape is there, and the people would come back, I guess, in times of travel, and if it was needed, they just throw some Spinifex or whatever over, and you've got an instant shelter, you know. So I really like the concept of the turpentine and the Spinifex together to represent the shelter, which is Wingreeguu in my traditional language. And I like the shape of it, and yeah, so, and unknown to me at the time, I didn't know that you know, lots of the other works were going to be sort of based on structural shapes and things like that. So yes, and it's probably the biggest piece I've done, and it was, you know, it took a bit of time and stuff like that, but it's very, very interesting to do, and yeah. So the idea has basically come from the plant itself, quite often tipped over by whirly winds out in the bush, and they're laying there upside down, and you think, well, look, you could come along and you could actually throw something over the top of that, and there's a little place to stay if you needed to do that. So that's basically what I've done. Yeah.
More or less.
More or less. I'll tell you what my little grandsons liked it. They used to get in it when I was making it, and they thought, well, you know, and they've actually asked me where it's gone to. Yeah, where's their cubby?
I think there's a picture of Nathaniel reading a book inside one, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. So Shirley, the circles, how did you arrive at that idea of covering the outer surface of the work? Because I think you thought about different ways of approaching it, and it probably took a little time just to arrive at how you were going to finish that in the end.
I did. It took a bit of time actually, because I thought that. Well, I wasn't too sure how I was going to use the strands, and I've used the rings in lots of my work, and the little strands running down. So I'd actually thought, well, it's the best way for me to do it, and yeah. So I made the rings. I'd actually had a heap of them made, and I tried another way, and then I thought, no, that's not going to work for me. So I go back to my initial plan of doing the rings. And then as I was working along it, I thought, well, you know, this is, and of course, like with all things, you know, nothing always works to a plan. You always hope it does, but something throws a spanner in it, and you think, well, righto, you know, this is. But those little rings, I've used those rings in lots of my works, and the strings as well, and they've always been representative of tracks, of storylines and things that, you know, the little strands that are in there in other works, of a connecting link between us all, and the rings. And I thought, well, you know, they've always been a connecting link, those, to where we are and who we are and where we come from. And for me, I thought, this is what we do. You know, we go round and round in circles. You know, and we don't go too far away. Well, I don't, and I probably should, but I don't really go, you know, a really long. Well, you go away, you go around in circles. You always go back to where you come from. Basically, I don't know whether that's a thing with Aboriginal people or not, but for me, it's quite a strong thing and belief in my life, and I know that like basically we go around and around and around in circles, and we live there and we die there. So yeah, they're very symbolic to our existence in our environment, in our area.
And on that note, could you say something about the yellow ochre, because I know that's very important to you, and where it came from and what it means to you?
Well, the yellow ochre is very special, and it is truly special. And I have a connecting link with the yellow ochre that I've used in my other works as well. That you know, they're probably carriers of the essence of where you know, that belonging is, I guess, And the yellow ochre does come from a very special place and has a very special meaning. And yes, so, and you know, it is very special and needs to be cared for, and it's a nurturing essence that belongs to us. So yes.
And I think it was probably quite difficult for you and caused you a little bit of worry, you know, to think about the yellow ochre travelling in its plastic buckets all the way to the gallery, and then, you know, worrying what might happen to it, how people might treat it. So it was important for us to discuss all of those aspects, wasn't it?
And we did.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yes. Matter of fact, the buckets were addressed to Diane
Yeah.
at QAGOMA, and she got them, and but no, because she had the list of all the instructions, so and she followed them to a T. So
I was drawing the lines of it as she was talking to me on the telephone. No, it must go around those pieces, then underneath that piece, and around that, and around that. So Shirley had to trust me to pour that bucket of yellow ochre and then spread it out like that.
But I knew I could trust her, so.
I said, the conservator was here, and I said, I'm channeling Shirley.
And Shirley was in town that day, and her phone wouldn't work.
That's right.
But no,
well,
it works
we're coming
well.
to the end of the talk, but if you have any questions, Shirley would be happy to answer them, or myself. So.
But I just think that in sort of finishing off is that it's probably bringing a part of that bit of bush out there to and it's a wonderful space, and and I'm quite happy. I did worry because I didn't know how well it would travel, so that in one respect has shown that it is actually quite strong, in the construction as well, which I am surprised, because I haven't done anything this size before, because all my works have been relatively small, and with the combination of both those plants live together in the bush. One goes up and one lives there below. So basically they live together in the bush. So that's just doing it another way. And I thought, well, anyone that sees my work at home is going to think I'm quite mad, but I thought, well, and I'll tell you what though, what's happened is, we actually went to Camberwell the other day, and who I went with said, look at that there, that's a good one. We tip it over. But yeah. So it's making use of what we have in our area. It's about looking after our environment, and ours is quite a harsh one, really. And for me, one of the biggest things is to be able to go out there and see something that's out there in the bush that I can actually be creative with and make something from, that I can, and it's about sharing as well. So if we can share that with everyone else as well, so yeah.
And not surprisingly, in all these years, nobody else has taken up weaving with Spinifex, have they?
Well, you know what,
I've been waiting for it to happen, but...
Well, I've had 2.5 weeks, and my hands are recovered. And I wear a safety pin on my shirts that I work with all the time. I have one glove, and it's black from the Spinifex wax, because there's also a beautiful resin that comes out of the wax that is used for traditional purposes as well. It's used for it's an adhesive that's used for gluing the stone tools onto the shafts of the tools, and it's a very beautiful material as well that the Spinifex actually has on the plant. And when you're using it, when I'm collecting, my hands are it goes black when you're picking the Spinifex, when you're harvesting the Spinifex, and it just sticks to your hand all the time. I've bought a couple of balls of it down. You need to heat it up to manipulate it, to use it for whatever you're going to use it for. And yeah, and I have my shirts I work on, or when I'm working in that, I've got a safety pin in my shirt, and my little grandsons always say, "What do you got a safety pin in there for?" You know, so every now and again you've got to dig a piece of Spinifex out. So it's you know, but it has some really good things about it as well. Yeah.
We call it a love-hate relationship with
Yeah.
Spinifex.